The courtroom fell silent as Judge Margaret Blackwood delivered her unprecedented order. Bring in the dog, let him choose. Every phone lifted, every breath held. Captain limped through the double doors, his scarred face catching the fluorescent light. The tumor was gone, but its legacy remained: a blind left eye, twisted features, a permanent head tilt. The German Shepherd moved slowly, each step a testament to survival. On the right side of the courtroom stood Travis Holloway, hands clenched, jaw tight. On the left stood Dr. Eleanor Richardson, tears already streaming. The deputy released the leash. What happened next would be replayed 47 million times across social media. Strangers would weep. News anchors would break protocol and cry on camera. An entire nation would pause and remember what it means to love. But to understand why a scarred dog's choice shattered hearts from coast to coast, you need to hear the whole story, a story that began on the coldest Christmas Eve Montana had seen in 30 years. Before we continue, please leave a like and let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. Dr. Eleanor Richardson, Elle to everyone in Whitefish, had spent 40 years as a veterinarian before hanging up her stethoscope 5 years ago, at 62. She lived alone in a small house on the outskirts of town. Her only companions a rotating cast of stray cats and the ghosts of better days. Her husband James had died of pancreatic cancer 3 years prior. Before that, in 2015, her son Michael, a Marine, just 28 years old, had been killed in Afghanistan. The Army had come to her door on a Tuesday. She remembered that detail with painful clarity. Tuesday. Meatloaf night. Elle had retired not because she wanted to, but because she couldn't bear it anymore. Too many healthy animals euthanized because their owners couldn't afford treatment. Too many frightened eyes looking at her with trust while she administered the final injection. After Michael died, after James followed, she just couldn't carry any more death. She wore James's old flannel jacket everywhere, its sleeves frayed and smelling faintly of motor oil and Old Spice. Her gray hair stayed in a practical bun. Her hands, calloused from decades of work, knew how to heal, but had forgotten how to feel. Christmas Eve 2019 found her alone, deliberately avoiding the church service where well-meaning neighbors would offer sympathy she didn't want. She'd planned to spend the evening with whiskey and old photographs, her annual tradition of productive misery. Whitefish, Montana, population 7,200. Was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone's business. Main Street boasted Betty's Diner, the First Lutheran Church, Maine's veterinary clinic with its modern glass facade, and not much else. Winters were brutal, 4 feet of snow, temperatures dropping to 20 below zero. The town survived on ranching, retirees, and summer tourism that dried up come November. People here went to church, looked after their neighbors, and held strong opinions about everything from politics to the proper way to shovel snow. There was tension, though. Old-timers versus the newcomers buying up property, traditional values bumping against changing times. And there was Travis Holloway. The veteran had moved to town 2 years ago, living in a trailer on rural property, kept to himself mostly. Some folks felt sympathy he'd served his country, clearly struggled with PTSD. Others kept their distance, unpredictable temper, drank too much at the bar on weekends. His German Shepherd had been seen around town until about 8 months ago. When asked, Travis said the dog ran off. Nobody questioned it much. Dogs ran off sometimes. That Christmas Eve, nobody knew the truth was much darker. Elle's truck made a grinding noise as she pulled out of the grocery store parking lot at 6:30 that evening. She'd bought single-serving frozen dinners and cat food, the shopping list of someone who'd stopped pretending the holidays mattered. The temperature was dropping fast, the truck's thermometer reading -18 and falling. A blizzard was rolling in, the kind that made the evening news warn people to stay home. She just wanted to get back before the roads became impassable. The grinding grew louder. Elle cursed under her breath and pulled behind an abandoned gas station, its windows boarded up, snow drifting against rusted pumps that hadn't worked in a decade. She killed the engine and climbed out. Wind cutting through James's jacket like it was paper, kneeling beside the truck to check underneath. Her flashlight beam swept across oil stains and frozen mud. Something moved. Elle froze. There, wedged beneath an old rusted pickup truck that had been abandoned here for years, was a dog. Not just any dog, a German Shepherd. Except its face was grotesquely distorted by a mass the size of a grapefruit, covering the left side of its head and eye. The tumor, if that's what it was, wept fluid that had frozen in streaks down matted fur. The animal was skeletal. Elle could count every rib through the dirty coat. How long had it been here? Days, weeks. "Sweet Jesus," she whispered. "How long have you been suffering?" The dog growled weakly when she took a step closer, but even as it did, its tail gave a tiny, hesitant wag. That small gesture, defiance and hope in equal measure, hit Elle like a fist to the chest. She moved slowly, keeping her voice low and calm. "Easy, boy. Easy." In the dog's one visible eye focused on her, and something flickered in Elle's memory. She'd seen thousands of dogs in her career, but there was something familiar about the way this one held itself, even broken and dying. She crawled closer, snow soaking through her jeans. The dog didn't snap, just watched her with that one eye while its tail continued that pitiful wag. Then Elle saw the collar. Old leather. Nameless. But underneath, she pulled at it with gentle fingers, there was another tag. Older. Nearly worn smooth. Her flashlight beam caught the engraving, Duke, SAR K9 Unit Number 347. Elle's heart stopped. She'd been volunteering with the county search and rescue program, training dogs. There had been a young German Shepherd, maybe 8 months old, brilliant and eager and perfect. She'd spent 8 months training him, watched him pass every certification with flying colors. Duke. They'd told her he'd been adopted by a search and rescue organization downstate. She'd lost track of him after that, assumed he was living his purpose, saving lives in disasters and wilderness emergencies. But this couldn't be Duke, she whispered. "Is that really you, boy?" The dog's remaining eye locked onto hers. Recognition flickered. The tail wagging became stronger, more insistent. Elle felt tears freeze on her cheeks. Oh, God, what happened to you? Whatever answer existed, it could wait. Right now, on Christmas Eve, with a blizzard bearing down and temperatures plummeting, Elle had a decision to make. She'd retired to avoid this, to avoid caring, avoid the inevitable heartbreak, avoid watching something die despite her best efforts. But looking at Duke, at this dog she'd trained, who'd somehow ended up here, abandoned and dying, she heard James's voice in her head. "You can't save everyone, Elle, but you can save the one in front of you." "I'm not leaving you here," she said firmly. "Not tonight. Not ever." Duke wouldn't come out voluntarily. Too frightened, too weak, too traumatized by whatever hell he'd endured. Elle had to crawl under the truck, her shoulders scraping rust, motor oil staining her clothes, the cold seeping into her bones. The space was cramped and dark and smelled of decay. Duke whimpered when she reached him but didn't bite. She wrapped him in James's flannel jacket, the one she'd sworn she'd never part with, and gathered the emaciated body into her arms. Carrying him out, she realized he couldn't weigh more than 45 pounds. A healthy German Shepherd male should be 85, maybe 90. She got him into the truck's cab and cranked the heat to maximum. Duke's body shook with violent shivers. Now what Maine's clinic was closed for the holiday. The nearest emergency vet was 90 miles away in Kalispell, and the blizzard was already making the roads treacherous. Elle looked at Duke, at his labored breathing and the tumor that was probably killing him. "I'll have to do this myself," she said quietly, "like the old days." She put the truck in gear and headed home through the whiteout, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on Duke's trembling head. "Stay with me, boy," she murmured. "Just stay with me." Elle's garage still held equipment from her veterinary days, things she couldn't bring herself to sell or donate. She'd kept telling herself she might need them someday. Tonight, someday had arrived. She cleared her work table, positioned shop lights overhead, and dragged a space heater close. The garage was freezing, but it would have to do. Duke lay on the table, his breathing shallow and rapid. Elle began her examination with hands that remembered this work even after 5 years away. What she found made her stomach turn. The mass wasn't a tumor, it was a hematoma, a massive collection of blood that had organized into a semi-solid mass. This kind of injury came from repeated blunt force trauma. Someone had hit this dog in the head, over and over, until blood vessels ruptured and the fluid accumulated under the skin. Running her fingers carefully over his skull, she felt the ridges of old fractures, multiple impact sites, all healed, which meant they'd happened over months, maybe years. The hematoma was infected, Duke's fever spiking at 104 degrees. His body was septic, shutting down. He was severely malnourished, dehydrated, anemic. As she continued examining, Elle found more horrors. Old scars on his body, circular burns consistent with cigarettes, healed broken ribs that had set wrong, signs of systematic, deliberate abuse that made her hands shake with rage. "Someone did this to you," she whispered. "On purpose. For a long time." She should call Richard Maines, even on Christmas Eve, for an emergency this severe. He'd come, but Elle knew what he'd say. The same thing she would have said 5 years ago, before Michael, before James, before she'd learned that sometimes mercy looked like fighting impossible battles. He'd recommend euthanasia. Quick, painless, humane. Duke's one visible eye opened, watching her. Despite everything, the pain, the fever, the years of torment, his tail gave a weak thump against the table. He still trusted, still hoped. "I'll stabilize you tonight," Elle said, her voice steady with decision. "We'll figure out tomorrow together." She started an IV line, hands working with practiced efficiency. Fluids, antibiotics, pain medication. Duke didn't fight, just watched her with that one eye as if he understood she was trying to help. She was drawing up a second dose of antibiotics when Duke's body suddenly convulsed. Seizure. His legs went rigid, head snapping back. Elle grabbed him, trying to protect him from injuring himself further, but the seizure was violent and she could barely hold on. Then his breathing stopped. No. 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 Elle checked for a pulse. Nothing. She yanked him flat on the table and started chest compressions, counting aloud. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She tilted his head back, breathed into his nose, back to compressions. Her mind flashed to another moment. A Tuesday afternoon. 2 men in dress uniforms at her door. "Mrs. Richardson, we regret to inform you." Michael had been dead before they'd knocked. There was nothing she could have done. No amount of medical knowledge would have brought her son back from an IED explosion 7,000 miles away. "Not again," Elle gasped, pumping Duke's chest. "I won't lose someone else. Not on Christmas. Not when you're right here." 1 minute passed. 2. Her arms burned. Sweat dripped into her eyes despite the cold. "Breathe, damn you, breathe." 3 minutes. 4. Medical training told her it was too long. Brain damage was likely. She should stop. But she kept going. 5 minutes. Then a gasp. Weak, rattling, but a breath. Elle's fingers found a pulse. Thready, irregular, but there. Duke's eye flickered open, fixed on her face. He licked her hand with a dry tongue. Elle collapsed against the table, sobbing. "You want to live, don't you? You stubborn, brave boy. You're not ready to give up." She pressed her forehead against his. "All right. We fight. Together. I promise you." Throughout the long night, Elle monitored vitals, adjusted medications, watched for signs of another crisis. The garage remained bitterly cold despite the heater. Elle wrapped Duke in every blanket she owned and pulled her chair close to the table. She talked to him about James, about their 42 years together, about Michael, who'd enlisted against her wishes because he wanted to serve something larger than himself. "He was brave like you," she told Duke softly. "Too brave sometimes." Wouldn't quit even when he should have. That's what got him killed in the end. Duke's ear twitched at the sound of her voice. You need a new name. Elle continued. Fresh start. Duke was the dog someone hurt. You're going to be someone else. Someone stronger. She thought of Michael. His unit had called him captain, not his rank. Just a nickname that stuck because he always took charge. Always looked after his people. Captain, Elle said. That's who you are now. Captain. At the sound of the name, the dog's tail moved slightly. You like that, Captain, it is. By 3 in the morning, Captain's vitals had stabilized. His breathing was less labored. The fever had dropped 2 degrees. He was sleeping, finally, instead of hovering in that gray space between life and death. Elle pulled her coat tighter and settled into the chair, unwilling to leave him alone. I retired to avoid heartbreak, she whispered. Thought I'd shut myself off, coast through whatever years I have left without feeling anything. She stroked Captain's head gently. But maybe this is why I'm still here. Maybe I'm supposed to save you. Or maybe you're supposed to save me. I don't know anymore. She fell asleep with her hand resting on his side, feeling the rise and fall of his breathing. When dawn broke on Christmas morning, light filtering through the garage window, Elle jolted awake. Her first thought was panic had he died in the night, but Captain was breathing. His eye opened when she stirred, and for the first time, his tail wagged with something approaching strength. Merry Christmas, Captain, Elle said, tears of relief streaming down her face. The storm had passed. They'd both survived the night. Now the real battle would begin. Elle knew she couldn't do this alone. Captain needed surgery complex, expensive surgery that required equipment and expertise she didn't have. On December 26th, she photographed Captain carefully, not exploiting his suffering but showing the reality, and posted to the Whitefish Community Facebook group. Found this injured German Shepherd on Christmas Eve. He needs extensive surgery to survive. Estimated cost $12,000. Taking donations. Every dollar helps. Please share. The responses came within minutes. Betty Morrison from the diner. I'll give $50. Poor baby. Calvin Peters from the VFW Post. Count me in for $100. God bless you. L. But not everyone was supportive. Someone named Jennifer Dawes wrote, just put it down. Stop torturing it. This is cruel, not kind. Another comment. There are homeless children in this country and you're begging for money for a dog. Then came the comment that changed everything. Larry Hutchins, who lived on rural Route 7. That looks like Travis Holloway's dog that went missing last spring. Elle stared at the screen. Travis Holloway. The name meant nothing to her. She'd met him once at the hardware store. Nodded hello. He'd seemed rough around the edges, but not remarkable. She pushed the thought aside. Right now, Captain needed medical care. Elle loaded Captain into her truck and drove to Maine's veterinary clinic. She'd swallowed her pride and called Richard Maines that morning. He'd agreed to see them, though his tone had been cool. The clinic was all glass and chrome, a monument to modern veterinary medicine. Dr. Richard Maines had inherited it from his father and expanded it into the most successful practice in the county. At 38, he was efficient, professional, and increasingly focused on the bottom line. Maines examined Captain thoroughly, took x-rays, ran blood work. His face remained neutral throughout. The mask of clinical detachment Elle recognized because she'd worn it herself for decades. Finally, he delivered his assessment. The hematoma needs to be drained surgically. We'll need to remove necrotic tissue, possibly place a plate in his skull where the fractures have weakened the bone. Post-operative care will be intensive. He paused. Total cost, including surgery and 2 weeks of hospitalization, $12,000. Maybe more if complications arise. Elle nodded. Can you do it? Mrs. Richardson, Maines said carefully. I need to be honest with you. This dog has maybe a 5% chance of surviving the surgery. Even if he does, quality of life will be poor. He'll likely be blind, possibly brain damaged, definitely disfigured. The humane thing. I'm not asking your opinion on what's humane. Elle cut him off, her voice sharp. Can you do the surgery or not? Mains's jaw tightened. I could, but I won't. I won't waste resources on a lost cause when there are treatable animals waiting for care. Mrs. Richardson, I'll euthanize him for free. It's the responsible choice. Elle felt rage building in her chest. Responsible. You mean convenient. I mean realistic. He survived Christmas Eve when he should have died. He fought his way back from cardiac arrest. He wants to live. And you're telling me he's not worth the effort? Other clients in the waiting room had gone quiet, watching. I'm telling you, Maines said, his voice strained with patience, that as a medical professional, I cannot in good conscience operate when the outcome is almost certainly, then we're done here. Elle scooped Captain into her arms. The dog whimpered but didn't struggle. She turned to face the waiting room. When did we decide life is only worth saving if it's convenient? This dog has more fight in him than most people I know. I'll find someone who hasn't forgotten what it means to heal. She walked out. Someone in the waiting room was filming on their phone. By that evening, the video had 17,000 views. Elle sat in her truck, Captain's head in her lap, and made a phone call she'd been putting off for years. Sarah, it's Elle Richardson. I know we haven't talked since James's funeral, but I need your help. Dr. Sarah Chen had been Elle's student 20 years ago, then her colleague, then her friend. At 45, Sarah was one of the best veterinary surgeons in Montana, working out of a specialty clinic in Billings. Elle? My God, it's good to hear your voice. What's wrong? Elle explained everything. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Elle thought the call had dropped. Then Sarah said, I saw the video. You telling off Richard Maines. It's all over Montana veterinary circles. I didn't mean to cause a scene. Are you kidding? It's about time someone called him out. He's forgotten why we do this. A pause. I'm coming. Tomorrow. I'll bring everything we need. Sarah, I can't pay. Did I ask you to? I'm coming. Text me your address. Sarah Chen arrived the next afternoon with a van full of portable surgical equipment. She was petite, with short black hair and hands that moved with practiced precision. She examined Captain while Elle hovered anxiously. Elle, Sarah said quietly, this hematoma, it's from repeated blunt force trauma, multiple impacts over time. I know. Someone did this deliberately, for months, maybe years. I know, Elle repeated, her voice hard. Sarah looked at the x-rays on her laptop. The fracture patterns see these. They're consistent with being struck with something cylindrical. A bat, maybe a metal pipe? She pointed to other findings. These burns on his body, cigarettes, and look at the ribs. 3 broken, healed incorrectly because they were never treated. Elle's hands clenched into fists. Can you save him? Maybe. If we can drain the hematoma and debride the necrotic tissue without causing a brain bleed, if the infection hasn't spread to his brain, if his body can handle the anesthesia in his weakened state. Sarah met her eyes. It's a long list of ifs, Elle, but you'll try. I'll try. The fundraiser had reached $8,400. Elementary school students from Whitefish Elementary sent drawings and letters. One, from a girl named Emma, read, Dear Captain, you are brave. I hope you feel better. Love, Emma, age 7. Elle taped the letters to her refrigerator and cried. Surgery was scheduled for January 15th. Sarah would perform it in Elle's garage, which they converted into a sterile operating suite as best they could. The night before surgery, Sarah sat with Elle and Captain in the living room. If things go wrong tomorrow, Sarah said gently, we might not be able to bring him back. I know. Elle, you need to prepare yourself. I'm prepared. I'm prepared to watch him fight. That's all I can do. Captain lay between them, his head on Elle's lap. Despite the tumor, Despite the pain, his tail thumped softly whenever either woman spoke. Surgery began at 7 in the morning on January 15th. Elle scrubbed in to assist, her hands steady despite the fear racing through her. Sarah made the first incision. What followed was 7 hours of meticulous, exhausting work, draining 800 milliliters of infected blood and fluid, removing tissue so damaged it had turned black. Discovering that the skull fractures were worse than anticipated, they'd need to place a titanium plate. 5 hours in, Captain's blood pressure dropped. "Elle, we're losing him," Sarah said, her voice tense. "Heart rate's unstable." The monitors beeped frantically. Elle watched the numbers plummet. "Give me 5 more minutes," Elle said. "His body can't take it. 5 minutes. Please." Sarah made a decision. She reached for a vial. Elle recognized an expensive experimental clotting agent that promoted rapid healing but cost $300 per dose. "This is coming out of my pocket," Sarah muttered, injecting it directly into the surgical site. For 30 seconds, nothing changed. Then Captain's blood pressure began to climb. Heart rate steadied, the bleeding slowed, then stopped. "I'll be damned," Sarah whispered. They finished the surgery. Sarah closed with tiny, precise stitches that would minimize scarring. Not that it would matter much given the damage already done. Captain was placed in an induced coma for 48 hours to let his body begin healing without the stress of consciousness. Elle never left his side. She slept in a chair beside the makeshift recovery kennel, waking every hour to check his vitals. On the 3rd day, Sarah reduced the sedation. Captain's eye opened. He was disoriented, confused, in pain despite the medication. His gaze swept the room frantically until it landed on Elle. Recognition. His tail moved, just barely, but it moved. "Welcome back, Captain," Elle said through tears. But the battle wasn't over. Captain couldn't eat solid food. His jaw was too damaged, too swollen. Sarah inserted a feeding tube, threading it through his nose into his stomach. Elle would have to feed him 6 times a day, every 4 hours, even through the night. She set alarms. She measured formula. She learned to operate the feeding pump Sarah left behind. Captain gained 2 pounds the first week. Then, in late January, his temperature spiked. The infection was back, resistant to the first round of antibiotics. Sarah drove back from Billings with stronger medications. "This is the last line of defense," she warned. "If these don't work..." They worked. Barely. Captain's fever broke after 5 terrifying days. The fundraiser had reached $15,000, but Elle's bills were at $18,000. She went to the bank and took out a mortgage on her house. "Are you sure about this, Mrs. Richardson?" the loan officer asked. "At your age, with your income." "I'm sure." Progress was agonizingly slow. Physical therapy began: short walks to rebuild muscle, exercises to improve mobility. Captain's left eye remained blind, clouded white from damage. His face would never look normal again. But his personality began emerging, gentle with Elle's cats, watching her constantly with his good eye, whimpering when she left the room. Never, ever aggressive, despite everything humans had done to him. Betty Morrison started bringing meals for Elle and special soft food for Captain. "You're going to work yourself to death. Elle Richardson, let us help." Neighbors took turns sitting with Captain when Elle needed to sleep more than 2 hours at a stretch. Pastor Jim Williams from First Lutheran came by. "I know you don't come to church anymore, Elle, but we're praying anyway." The local newspaper ran a story: "Retired vet battles to save abused dog." It was picked up by regional outlets, then state news. Donations increased. Cards arrived from strangers across Montana. And Captain kept fighting, day by day, ounce by ounce, step by step. By mid-February, he could walk around the yard on his own. He'd gained 18 pounds. The feeding tube was still in place, but Sarah was cautiously optimistic it could be removed soon. That's when Travis Holloway appeared. Elle was walking Captain in the small park on Main Street when the truck pulled up. February 20th, a cold, clear morning. The kind where your breath crystallized in front of your face. Captain had been doing so well. He could manage 15 minutes of walking now, his gait still uneven but stronger every day. Elle had been thinking about maybe removing the feeding tube next week if he continued improving. The truck door slammed. A man stepped out disheveled, wearing a stained Carhartt jacket, eyes bloodshot. "That's my dog." Elle's hand tightened on the leash. "Excuse me. Duke. That's Duke. My dog. I've been looking for him." Travis Holloway moved closer. He smelled of cigarettes and something sharper. Alcohol. Maybe. At 10 in the morning. Captain's reaction was immediate and visceral. He pressed against Elle's legs, trembling. A puddle formed beneath him as his bladder released involuntarily. "Stay back," Elle said sharply. "You're scaring him." "He's my dog. I want him back." A small crowd was gathering. This was Whitefish Entertainment was wherever you found it, and a confrontation on Main Street was front-page news. "That dog has a hematoma the size of a grapefruit from someone beating him," Elle said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "Know anything about that?" Travis's face flushed. "It was an accident. He got hit by a car. I couldn't afford the vet." "That's a lie." Elle's voice was steel. Dr. Sarah Chen examined him. "Those injuries are from repeated blunt force trauma over months. Someone beat him with a bat or pipe. Repeatedly." "You don't know what you're talking about, old woman. I know a terrified animal when I see one. And your dog is terrified of you." Captain was shaking so hard Elle could feel it through the leash. He kept trying to get behind her, to make himself small, his good eye wide with panic. Travis changed tactics, his voice becoming pleading. "Look, I'm a veteran. I have PTSD. I need my service dog. You can't keep him from me. It's illegal. He's not a service dog. He's a search and rescue dog I trained 8 years ago, and someone tortured him. He's my property. I have registration papers. You stole him." Elle felt her world tilting. Property, papers, legal ownership. People were filming on their phones. Someone had called the sheriff's office because Deputy Tom Morrison pulled up in his patrol car, lights flashing. "What's going on here?" Tom was young, maybe 30, with the patient expression of someone used to mediating small-town disputes. Travis pulled papers from his truck dog registration, dated 2018, showing Duke registered to Travis Holloway. "I want my dog back. She stole him." Tom examined the papers. His face was carefully neutral. "Mrs. Richardson. What's your side?" "I found him on Christmas Eve, dying under an abandoned truck. The medical evidence shows systematic abuse. I've spent $20,000 saving his life. And look at him, Tom. Look at how he reacts to Travis." Everyone looked. Captain had urinated again, was practically climbing Elle's leg to get away from Travis, making small whining sounds of pure terror. Tom's jaw tightened. "Mr. Holloway, that dog doesn't seem to recognize you fondly. He's confused from the injury. He'll remember me." "Stay away from Mrs. Richardson's property," Tom said finally. "Both of you, I'm giving you 48 hours to figure this out. Get lawyers if you need them. But Travis, you come near her house before this is settled, and I'll arrest you for trespassing." "Understood. This is bullshit. That's my dog. 48 hours. Move along." Travis left, but not before shooting Elle a look that made her blood run cold. "I'll get a lawyer. That's my dog." Elle drove home with Captain trembling in the passenger seat. She called Sarah immediately. "We have a problem." Within 24 hours, Whitefish split into 2 camps. Team Travis gathered at the VFW post. Calvin Peters, the post commander, led the charge. Travis Holloway served his country. He has PTSD. He deserves respect and support, not accusations from some woman who thinks she knows everything. "He has legal ownership papers," added Jennifer Dawes. "You can't just steal someone's property because you think you can care for it better." Where does this end? Someone decides they don't like how you treat your dog, so they just take it. That's not how the law works. Innocent until proven guilty. We don't even know if he hurt the dog. Maybe it really was an accident. Team L met at Betty's diner, which had become unofficial headquarters for Captain's supporters. "That dog is terrified of him," Betty said, her voice loud enough for the whole diner to hear. "You can't fake that kind of fear. Travis abandoned him, left him to die. Elle saved his life. She's his real owner now. I don't care about papers. We're talking about a living creature that was abused. You really want to send him back to his abuser?" "My granddaughter sent Captain a card. She came home from school crying when she heard Travis might take him back," she said. "Doesn't anyone care that he's scared?" The Whitefish Tribune ran dueling op-eds. Pro-Travis, property rights and the presumption of innocence. Pro-L. When does morality trump legality? Social media exploded. The video of Elle confronting Travis had gone viral. National news picked it up. CNN ran a segment. Fox News covered it. Everyone had an opinion. Then, Deputy Tom Morrison did something on his own time that changed everything. He drove out to Travis's property, a sagging trailer on 5 acres of weeds and junk. He walked the perimeter, looking. In the backyard, he found a heavy chain staked to the ground, old blood stains on the metal links, brown stains in the dirt where something had bled repeatedly. In the shed, behind rusty paint cans, he found a baseball bat, hair and dried blood on the barrel. Tom photographed everything. Sent the bat to the state crime lab for testing. Called Animal Control and requested Captain's old records. Animal Control found 2 complaints filed about Travis Holloway in 2019. Both reported hearing a dog in distress. Both were marked, investigated unfounded without any actual investigation occurring. Tom dug deeper, found Travis's ex-girlfriend, Ashley Martinez, who'd moved to Great Falls. "Will you give a statement?" Tom asked her. Ashley's voice shook over the phone. "He beat that dog constantly, when he was drunk, which was most nights. I tried to stop him once. He hit me. That's why I left. Would you testify to that? If it helps Duke?" "Yes." The bat came back from the lab. The blood was canine. DNA matched Captain. The hair follicles were German Shepherd. Tom brought his findings to Sheriff Bradley. "We've got him," Tom said. "We've got proof." But Sheriff Bradley shook his head. "We can file charges. Probably will. But until a court convicts him, he still legally owns that dog, and his lawyers already filed a motion to return the property. That's insane. That's the law." A court date was set for April 3rd. Civil court, not criminal. This was a property dispute. The criminal animal cruelty charges would take months to wind through the system. Meanwhile, Whitefish descended into civil war. Someone spray-painted "dog thief" on Elle's mailbox. Betty's diner refused to serve anyone who'd signed a petition supporting Travis. The VFW post banned anyone who'd donated to Captain's medical fund. Pastor Jim Williams tried to mediate. He organized a town hall meeting at the church on February 25th. The sanctuary was packed. People stood along the walls. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Calvin Peters spoke first. "This isn't about whether Travis hurt the dog. This is about whether we're a nation of laws or a nation of feelings. Property rights are fundamental. Mrs. Richardson, however well-intentioned, has no legal right to keep that dog." Betty Morrison stood up. "We're talking about a living, breathing creature that was tortured. I watched the video of that confrontation. That dog urinated in fear. That's not debatable. That happened. Animals react strangely to trauma." "Oh, for God's sake, Calvin, stop defending the indefensible." Arguments erupted across the sanctuary. Pastor Williams tried to restore order. Then Dr. Richard Maines stood up. The room went quiet. Maines had stayed out of the controversy after Elle's confrontation at his clinic. "I need to say something," Maines began. His voice was quiet, and people leaned forward to hear. "When Mrs. Richardson brought Captain to my clinic, I recommended euthanasia. I told her the dog wasn't worth saving, that it was a waste of resources." He paused, and Elle saw his hands were shaking. "I was wrong. Completely. Utterly wrong. I've reviewed Dr. Chen's surgical notes, the photographic evidence, the medical documentation. That dog shows clear, undeniable signs of systematic abuse over an extended period. Multiple skull fractures, burns, broken ribs that healed without treatment, a hematoma from repeated strikes to the head. His voice grew stronger. As a medical professional, I'm stating unequivocally Travis Holloway abused that animal. Whether he goes to prison for it is for a criminal court to decide. But morally, ethically, he should never be allowed near that dog again. Mrs. Richardson saved Captain's life. She spent $20,000 of her own money. She's given him a reason to live, and Travis Holloway wants him back. For what? To finish what he started. Maines turned to face Travis, who sat in the back row. You don't deserve him. You never did. The room erupted, half in applause, half in outrage. Travis stood up, his face purple with rage. You people don't know anything. I have PTSD. I was drunk. I didn't mean... He stopped, realized what he'd said. Everyone stared. You didn't mean to what? Betty asked quietly. Travis stumbled over his words. I mean it was an accident. But the damage was done. He'd essentially admitted it. Travis left the church, but the confession hung in the air. A national law firm called L that night. We'd like to represent you pro bono. This case could set important precedent for animal welfare law. A GoFundMe for Captain's legal defense raised $23,000 in 3 days. The Today Show called, Good Morning America. The story was everywhere. Veteran versus rescuer battle for abused dog. And through it all, Captain slowly healed. The feeding tube came out in early March. He took his first bite of solid food, a piece of chicken Elle had cooked, and chewed slowly, carefully. Good boy, Elle whispered, crying. Such a good boy. But the court date loomed, April 3rd, the day when a judge would decide who owned Captain, and whether ownership mattered more than love. March 20th arrived with deceptive calm. Elle was walking Captain around her property, watching him navigate the uneven ground with increasing confidence. 2 weeks until the court hearing. 2 weeks until a judge decided his fate. Captain was doing so well. He'd gained 32 pounds. The feeding tube scar was healing. He could eat soft foods without difficulty. His physical therapy had progressed to 20-minute walks twice daily. Elle was thinking maybe they'd win this. Maybe the judge would see reason. Then Captain collapsed. One moment he was walking beside her. The next his legs buckled and he went down hard, his body convulsing. Captain? Elle dropped to her knees beside him. Seizure, but different from the one after surgery. More violent. His entire body rigid. Foam at his mouth. Eye rolled back. She timed it. 90 seconds. When it finally stopped, Captain lay limp and unresponsive. Elle got him into her truck and called Sarah while driving. He's seizing. Bad. I'm bringing him to you. I'll be ready. The 3-hour drive to Billings was the longest of Elle's life. Captain had 2 more seizures in the truck. Elle had to pull over both times, helpless to do anything but make sure he didn't hurt himself. At Sarah's clinic, they rushed Captain into imaging. The CT scan revealed the nightmare Elle had been dreading. Brain swelling. Scar tissue from the original injuries was causing pressure. A fragment of bone they'd missed during the first surgery was pressing against his brain tissue. He needs surgery. Now. Sarah's face was grim. And Elle, this is more complex than the first one. Even if he survives, there could be permanent brain damage, personality changes, cognitive impairment. Elle looked at Captain, unconscious on the exam table, his scarred face peaceful for the first time in hours. We don't have a choice, do we? No. Without surgery, he'll die within 48 hours. Then do it. There's something else. Sarah hesitated. Travis's lawyer could argue that if Captain is neurologically damaged, he's no longer the same dog. that he's been irreparably harmed in your care. It could hurt your case." Elle's laugh was bitter. "So I let him die to preserve my legal argument. That's insane." "I know. I just wanted you to understand. Save him. That's all that matters. Save him." The surgery began at midnight. It lasted 9 hours. Sarah had to remove more skull than she'd anticipated, create a larger titanium plate, meticulously dissect away scar tissue that had wrapped around delicate brain structures. When she finally emerged, her scrubs were soaked with sweat. "He made it through, but the next 48 hours will tell us everything." Captain was moved to intensive care, a converted room in Sarah's clinic with round-the-clock monitoring. Elle refused to leave. She pulled a chair beside the cage and kept vigil. March 21st. Captain remained unconscious. Breathing maintained by medication. March 22nd. The seizures began. Every few hours. His body would convulse. The anti-seizure medications weren't working well. Sarah tried different combinations, different dosages. Nothing fully controlled them. Elle watched helplessly. During one particularly violent episode, she had to hold Captain's head to prevent him from smashing it against the cage bars. The sounds he made guttural, inhuman. Sounds of suffering would haunt her forever. When the seizure finally stopped, Captain lay panting, his remaining eye unfocused and confused. "I'm here," Elle whispered, stroking his head. "You're safe. I promise you're safe." But was he? Or was she torturing him, keeping him alive for her own selfish need not to lose someone else? By March 23rd, Captain's body was shutting down. His kidneys weren't filtering properly. His liver enzymes were elevated, multiple organ systems beginning to fail under the stress. Sarah pulled Elle aside. "We need to discuss options." "Don't, Elle. He's suffering. His body can't take much more. At some point, love means letting go." "I can't. I know." Sarah's voice was gentle. "But we can't let him suffer just because we can't bear to lose him." Elle looked through the glass at Captain. His breathing was labored, body twitching even in unconsciousness. "How long?" she asked. "Could be hours, could be days, but his quality of life, even if he pulls through, Elle, it won't be the same." That night, Sarah went home. The veterinary tech on duty offered to stay, but Elle sent her away. "I need to be alone with him." She prepared a syringe with euthanasia solution. Her hands remembered the motion she'd done this hundreds of times in her career. The final act of mercy when medicine had nothing left to offer. She sat beside Captain's cage, syringe on the table beside her. He was awake now. Sort of. His eye was open but didn't seem to see anything. His breathing rattled in his chest. "I'm so sorry, boy," Elle whispered. "I tried. God knows I tried so hard." She picked up the syringe. Her hand was shaking. "You fought so bravely. But I can't ask you to fight anymore. It's not fair. You've suffered enough." She opened the cage door. Captain didn't move, didn't react. "You taught me something, you know. You taught me it's okay to care again, to let people in, even when it hurts." She found the vein in his leg. The syringe hovered over it. "Thank you for that. Thank you for choosing to live, even when everything hurt. Thank you for trusting me." Her thumb rested on the plunger. She couldn't do it. Her hand shook so badly the syringe fell, rolling across the floor. "I can't," Elle sobbed. "I know I should. I know it's the right thing, but I can't." She laid her head on the cage, tears soaking into the blanket beneath Captain. "One more night. Give me one more night. If you're still suffering in the morning, I'll do it. I promise. But please, please, just one more night." She fell asleep like that, exhausted by grief, by impossible choices, by the weight of loving something that was dying. Dawnlight woke her. March 24th, 6 in the morning. Elle jerked awake, disoriented. Then memory crashed back. Captain! She looked into the cage, expecting what death continued suffering. Captain was awake. His eye was open and focused on her. His tail moved. Just once. A weak thump against the blanket. Then he lifted his head. For the first time in 4 days. He lifted his head. He licked her hand. Elle's sob was caught between joy and disbelief. You're still here. You're still fighting. She checked his vitals with shaking hands. Temperature down, heart rate stronger, breathing less labored. Sarah arrived at 7, expecting to find Elle preparing for the inevitable. Instead, she found Captain sitting up in his cage, drinking water from Elle's hand. I don't believe it, Sarah breathed. His vitals, how? I don't know. I went to sleep thinking I'd wake up to bury him, and he just came back. Sarah examined Captain thoroughly. The swelling's down, dramatically. The seizure medication finally kicked in, or his body found a way to compensate. Or, she shook her head. I can't explain it medically. He should not be sitting up right now. But there was damage. Captain's left eye, already blind, was now fully clouded. His face, already scarred, was more distorted from the second surgery. He had a pronounced head tilt that would likely be permanent. When Sarah helped him stand, his gait was unsteady, more compromised than before. Neurologically, there's definitely impairment, Sarah said carefully. He's not the same dog he was before this happened. Elle stroked Captain's head. None of us are the same after trauma, but he's alive. He's here. That's what matters. 10 days until court. 10 days to get Captain stable enough to attend. 10 days to prepare to fight the battle that would determine whether love or law would win. Elle looked at Captain, at his scarred face and clouded eye and crooked stance, and saw the most beautiful thing in the world. A survivor, a fighter, a soul that refused to quit. We're going to win, she told him. I don't know how, but we're going to win. Captain's tail wagged. April 3rd, 2020. The Flathead County Courthouse was packed by 8:30 in the morning. Though the hearing wasn't scheduled until 9, media vans lined the street. People who couldn't get seats stood in the hallway, hoping to catch glimpses through the courtroom doors. Judge Margaret Blackwood presided, 58 years old, silver-haired, with a reputation for no-nonsense rulings and zero tolerance for theatrics. She'd seen everything in 30 years on the bench, but even she seemed taken aback by the crowd. Travis Holloway sat at the defendant's table with his public defender, a young man named Marcus Webb who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Travis wore a button-down shirt someone had clearly made him wear, his hair combed back, trying to look respectable. On the other side sat Elle with her pro bono attorney from Missoula, Patricia Hammond, 63, gray suit, the kind of lawyer who'd spent her career fighting for underdogs and wasn't about to stop now. Captain was in a holding area, out of sight. The judge had ruled he'd be brought in only if necessary. This is a civil hearing regarding ownership of one German Shepherd, currently called Captain, previously registered as Duke. Judge Blackwood began. Mr. Webb, your opening statement. Marcus Webb stood. Your Honor, this is a simple matter of property law. Mr. Holloway legally purchased and registered this dog in 2018. He has documentation proving ownership. Mrs. Richardson, despite her good intentions, has no legal right to retain Mr. Holloway's property. We ask the court to order the dog's immediate return. Patricia Hammond rose. Your Honor, this case is about whether we value life over paperwork. The evidence will show that Mr. Holloway abandoned this dog, abused him systematically for over a year, and left him to die. Mrs. Richardson saved his life at tremendous personal cost. We'll demonstrate that Mr. Holloway forfeited any claim to ownership through his actions. Proceed with testimony, Judge Blackwood said, Travis Holloway took the stand first, under direct examination by his own lawyer. Travis told a sanitized story. He'd gotten Duke as an emotional support animal in 2018 to help with his PTSD. The dog had run away 8 months ago. He'd been searching ever since. When he saw the Facebook post, he'd recognized his dog immediately. "The tumor?" Webb prompted. "I didn't know he was sick. He must have gotten injured after he ran away. If I'd known, I would have helped him. I love that dog. Why didn't you file a missing dog report?" "I was in a bad place mentally, depression, but I never stopped looking for him." Patricia Hammond's cross-examination was surgical. "Mr. Holloway, in the 2 years you claim to have owned Duke, how many times did you take him to a veterinarian?" He was healthy. He didn't need to go. Not even for vaccinations, routine checkups. "No." "Did you officially register Duke as an emotional support animal with any medical professional?" Travis shifted. "No, I didn't know I had to." "Multiple neighbors reported hearing a dog in distress at your property throughout 2019. Any comment?" "People exaggerate. Dogs bark. It's not a crime." Hammond pulled out photographs. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit Exhibit C photographs of Mr. Holloway's property taken by Deputy Morrison. Mr. Holloway, can you explain the heavy chain in your backyard with blood stains? The baseball bat found in your shed with canine blood and German Shepherd hair that DNA testing matched to Captain..." Travis's face reddened. That could be from anything. Maybe he cut himself on the chain. Repeatedly over months. I don't know. I wasn't there when he allegedly got hurt." "Because you'd already abandoned him." "Objection," Webb said weakly. "Withdrawn. No further questions." Dr. Sarah Chen testified next, presenting the medical evidence in clear, devastating detail. X-rays showing multiple skull fractures in various stages of healing. The hematoma consistent with being struck repeatedly with a cylindrical object. Burns from cigarettes. Broken ribs that had healed without treatment. "In your expert opinion, Dr. Chen, could these injuries have been accidental?" "Absolutely not. The pattern indicates sustained, deliberate abuse over a minimum of 12 to 18 months. Webb tried to shake her testimony on cross-examination but failed. Sarah had 30 years of experience and wasn't intimidated. Martha Henley, Travis's elderly neighbor, took the stand next. "I saw Travis drag Duke by a chain across gravel on multiple occasions," she testified, her voice shaking with anger. "I heard that poor dog screaming, not barking. Screaming. I called animal control twice. They said they'd investigate, but never did." "Why didn't you call the police?" "I did. Once. They said it was an animal control matter." Martha's eyes filled with tears. "I've thought about that dog every day. I should have done more. I should have stolen him myself." Deputy Tom Morrison presented the physical evidence, the chain, the bat, the crime lab results. His testimony was professional, factual, damning. Then Ashley Martinez, Travis's ex-girlfriend, took the stand via video conference from Great Falls. "Travis would get drunk and beat Duke with his belt, his fists, whatever was handy," she said, her voice flat with old pain. "I tried to stop him once. He hit me. That's when I left. I've felt guilty ever since for not taking Duke with me." "Why didn't you report the abuse?" "I was scared and ashamed, and I didn't think anyone would believe me." She looked directly at the camera. "Duke was the sweetest dog. He'd curl up with me when I cried. He didn't deserve what Travis did to him." Webb's cross-examination was brief and ineffective. Ashley's testimony was too credible, too raw. Then Patricia Hammond called a surprise witness. "The defense calls Dr. Richard Maines." A murmur went through the courtroom. Maines walked to the stand, looking uncomfortable but determined. Under oath, he admitted, "When Mrs. Richardson first brought Captain to my clinic, I recommended euthanasia. I told her the dog wasn't worth saving. that it was a waste of resources. And now, I was wrong, completely, utterly wrong. Mains's voice was steady. I've reviewed all the medical documentation. That dog shows irrefutable signs of systematic torture. Mrs. Richardson's dedication to saving him reminded me why I became a veterinarian. I'd lost sight of that. He turned to look at Travis. You don't deserve him. You never did. Judge Blackwood had been taking notes throughout, her face impassive. Now she set down her pen. I've heard enough testimony. I'm going to do something unconventional. She looked at both lawyers. Bring in the dog. The courtroom stirred. Webb objected immediately. Your Honor, this isn't scientific evidence. Overruled. If this dog is truly Mr. Holloway's emotional support animal as claimed, he should recognize and respond to his owner. Deputy, please bring in the dog. Elle's heart hammered. This wasn't in the plan. They hadn't prepared for this. The door opened. A deputy led Captain in on a leash. The courtroom collectively gasped. Captain's appearance was shocking even to those who'd seen photographs. The left side of his face was collapsed where the tumor had been removed, scarred tissue pulled tight. His left eye was clouded white, completely blind. He had a pronounced head tilt. He limped, favoring his left rear leg, but his tail was up. His remaining brown eye was alert, taking in the strange environment. Release him in the center of the room, Judge Blackwood ordered. Mr. Holloway, stand on that side. Mrs. Richardson, the opposite side. Let's see who he goes to. Your Honor, this is highly irregular, Webb protested. This entire case is irregular. Counselor, the dog will tell us what words cannot. The deputy unclipped the leash. Captain stood in the center of the courtroom, suddenly unsure. Then he saw Travis. The change was instantaneous. Captain's ears flattened against his head, his tail tucked. His body went rigid with fear. A puddle formed beneath him as his bladder released. Duke, Travis called, his voice sharp. Come here, boy, come. Captain backed away, whimpering, low, terrified sounds. Travis took a step forward. Captain panicked. He tried to run, but his injured leg gave out and he fell, scrambling on the polished floor. The courtroom was dead silent except for Captain's whimpers and the scratch of his claws on tile. Elle hadn't moved, hadn't called to him. She stood perfectly still, tears streaming down her face. Captain saw her. Everything changed. His ears perked up. His tail began to wag tentatively at first, then harder. He made a sound not quite a bark, more like a cry. He struggled to his feet. His gait was uneven, his body still trembling, but he limped directly to Elle. He collapsed at her feet, pressing his body against her legs. He looked up at her with his one good eye and made small talking sounds that German shepherds make when they're trying to communicate. Elle knelt. Captain climbed into her lap, all 77 pounds of him, and buried his scarred face against her shoulder. His whole body shook, but his tail never stopped wagging. I've got you, Elle whispered, wrapping her arms around him. I've got you, Captain. Captain licked her face frantically, making more of those talking sounds, his tail beating against her leg. The courtroom was crying, openly. Judge Blackwood wiped her eyes. The court reporter's hands had stilled on her machine. Even Marcus Webb looked stricken. Travis Holloway stood frozen, his face crumbling. I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. God, I'm so sorry. I was so angry all the time. The war, the nightmares, the flashbacks, I took it out on him. I know I don't deserve him. I know I don't. Judge Blackwood let the moment sit. Let everyone in the courtroom witness what words could never adequately convey. Then she picked up her gavel. In 30 years on this bench, I have never witnessed anything like what just occurred in my courtroom. Her voice was firm, controlled, but emotion bled through. Mr. Holloway, that animal is terrified of you, absolutely terrified. That level of fear doesn't come from an accident or a misunderstanding. It comes from sustained trauma. She looked at the evidence folders on her desk. The medical evidence is overwhelming. The testimony is consistent. You systematically abused this dog for over a year. You beat him. You burned him. You broke his bones and never sought treatment. Then you abandoned him to die. Travis's lawyer started to speak, but Judge Blackwood held up her hand. Mrs. Richardson found him on Christmas Eve, dying under a truck in sub-zero temperatures. She has spent over $20,000 saving his life. She has cared for him through 3 surgeries, countless complications, and recovery that would have broken most people. She gave him a reason to live. Judge Blackwood looked at Captain, still pressed against L. That dog just told me everything I need to know about who he trusts, who he loves, who he considers his family. She raised her gavel. I am terminating Travis Holloway's ownership rights on grounds of abandonment and extreme abuse. Full ownership of the dog known as Captain is hereby transferred to Dr. Eleanor Richardson, Mr. Holloway. You are prohibited from owning any animals for a period of 10 years. I am also recommending the district attorney file criminal animal cruelty charges. The gavel came down. This case is closed. The courtroom erupted in applause unprecedented, and Judge Blackwood didn't stop it. Travis was led out by deputies, his shoulders shaking with sobs. Elle sat on the courtroom floor, holding Captain, barely able to process what had happened. Sarah Chen pushed through the crowd and dropped to her knees beside them, wrapping her arms around both Elle and Captain. "You won," Sarah whispered. "You both won." Captain's tail thumped against the floor. Outside, media surrounded them, but Elle barely registered it. Patricia Hammond handled the questions while Elle loaded Captain into her truck. As she drove home through Whitefish, past Betty's Diner where people were cheering from the windows, past the First Lutheran Church where the sign read, "Congratulations, Captain." Elle felt something she hadn't felt in 5 years. Hope. Not the desperate, clinging hope of someone trying to prevent loss, but the quiet, solid hope of someone who'd fought impossible odds and won. "You're mine now," she told Captain, her hand resting on his head. "Legally, officially mine. Nobody can take you away." Captain made his talking sounds and rested his head on her lap. They drove home together, survivor and savior, both forever changed by what they'd endured, both finally, truly, safe. December 15th, 2020. Whitefish Elementary School's library was decorated with construction paper snowflakes and strings of lights. 23 third graders sat in a circle on the carpet, and in the center lay Captain. 8 months had passed since the trial. Captain now weighed a healthy 82 pounds. His face would never look normal. The left side remained collapsed and scarred, his blind eye clouded white, his head permanently tilted. But when children looked at him, they didn't see a damaged dog. They saw Captain Courage, the bravest dog in Montana. Elle watched from a chair as 8-year-old Emma, the same girl who'd sent Captain a card when he was fighting for his life, sat beside him with a picture book. The... Emma struggled with the word, her speech impediment making certain sounds difficult. She'd been in speech therapy for 2 years with limited progress. Captain lay perfectly still, his head resting near her leg, his brown eye watching her face. "The turtle," Emma finally managed. She looked at Captain. "Did I do good?" Captain's tail thumped against the carpet. Emma beamed and continued reading, her confidence growing with each page. When she finished the book, she threw her arms around Captain's neck. "You're the best listener ever." Captain made his talking sounds, those small vocalizations German shepherds use, and gently licked her cheek. Emma's mother approached Elle after the session, tears in her eyes. She never had confidence before. She'd refused to read aloud at home. But with Captain, she reads to him every Tuesday. Her teacher says her reading scores have improved 2 grade levels. Elle stroked Captain's head. He has a gift for knowing exactly what people need. The reading program Captain participated in had 23 children now, Kids who struggled with reading, who had learning disabilities, who were simply shy, they all read to Captain. And Captain listened to every word, patient and present, never judging, never rushing them. Test scores showed dramatic improvement. But more than that, parents reported their children were kinder, more empathetic. One boy who'd been bullying classmates had spent 3 sessions crying into Captain's fur, telling him things he couldn't tell adults. The bullying had stopped. "He's changing lives," the principal told Elle. "Not just the children. Teachers are requesting time with him." One of our staff members who's been struggling with depression says the 15 minutes she spends with Captain on Tuesdays is what gets her through the week. The changes rippled far beyond the elementary school. Dr. Richard Maines had transformed his practice entirely. He'd partnered with Sarah Chen, who'd moved to Whitefish permanently. Together, they'd created Captain's Fund, a nonprofit that covered veterinary costs for abuse cases. "You reminded me why I took the Hippocratic Oath," Maines had told Elle at the fund's launch party. "I'd become so focused on profit margins that I forgot about healing. Captain taught me what I'd lost." The clinic now offered payment plans and provided free care 1 day per week. 3 other veterinarians in Montana had started similar programs, citing Captain's story as inspiration. Whitefish itself had changed. The town that had nearly torn itself apart over Captain had emerged closer, more united. They'd passed Captain's Law legislation imposing stricter penalties for animal abuse and mandatory investigation of all complaints. Animal control had been reformed. The 2 officers who'd marked Martha Henley's complaints as unfounded without investigation had been fired. New protocols required photographic evidence and follow-up visits. Even the VFW post, once divided, had found common ground. Calvin Peters now led a program pairing veterans with rescue dogs for therapy. "Captain showed us that healing isn't weakness," Calvin said at the program launch. "Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is ask for help." Travis Holloway was serving 2 years of probation for animal cruelty. He attended mandatory anger management, PTSD treatment through the VA, and Alcoholics Anonymous meetings 3 times weekly. Elle had surprised everyone by writing a letter to the judge opposing jail time. "He's sick, not evil," she'd written. "He needs treatment, not punishment. Vengeance won't heal anyone." Some in town called her too soft. Others saw wisdom in mercy. Travis worked at the hardware store. Now the owner had given him a chance. He was sober 4 months. He'd never tried to contact Elle or Captain. Some said he'd left town. Others reported seeing him at AA meetings, talking about making amends. Elle had changed too. She'd come out of retirement, consulting on abuse cases statewide. She'd opened a grief support group that met at First Lutheran despite her complicated relationship with faith. Pastor Williams had convinced her people needed her experience. Her house was full now. 3 foster dogs recovering from various traumas. 7 cats, some hers, some just visiting. Life, everywhere she looked. And Sarah Chen had coffee at Elle's house every Wednesday morning. What had started as medical consultations had become something warmer. They hadn't defined it, didn't need to. Just 2 women who'd found each other later in life, grateful for second chances. Captain didn't just survive, Elle told Sarah one morning. He taught me how to live again. Christmas Eve, 2020. Exactly 1 year since Elle had found a dying dog under a truck. She and Captain were at Children's Hospital in Missoula, in the pediatric oncology ward. They visited once a month now. Captain had become a certified therapy dog in October. In room 412, 6-year-old Marcus lay in bed. His body ravaged by leukemia. He was in final stage treatment, and the doctors had prepared his parents for the worst. But today, Marcus was scheduled for a crucial chemotherapy infusion, and he was refusing to let the nurses near him. "Please, sweetie," his mother begged. "You need this medicine." Marcus shook his head violently, tears streaming. "It hurts. I don't want it. I don't want it anymore." Elle knocked softly. "Mind if Captain and I come in?" Marcus looked at the doorway. Captain stood there, scarred face and blind eye and crooked stance, his therapy dog vest slightly askew. "His face is scary," Marcus whispered. Elle led Captain to the bedside. Someone hurt him very badly, beat him, burned him, left him to die. But he survived. He's the bravest dog I know. Did it hurt? Very much. He had 3 surgeries, months of pain, but he never gave up, even when he wanted to. Marcus reached out tentatively, touching the scars on Captain's face. Did you cry? Elle thought about those long nights in the garage, Captain seizing, suffering, fighting. I think he did, but he kept going anyway. That's what brave means, being scared and hurting, but doing it anyway. Captain seemed to understand. He laid his head on the edge of Marcus's bed, making his gentle talking sounds. Marcus's small hand rested on Captain's head. I'm scared. Captain stayed perfectly still, just present, just there. If Captain can be brave, Marcus said quietly, maybe I can too. He nodded to his mother. The nurses started the infusion. Captain didn't move for the entire 2-hour treatment. He lay with his head on Marcus's bed, occasionally making soft sounds, his brown eye watching the boy's face. When it was over, Marcus was crying, but he hugged Captain tight. Thank you for staying with me. Elle stepped outside, looking through the window at the parking lot. Snow was falling soft, gentle flakes catching the light. 1 year ago, she'd found Captain in weather like this. She'd been alone, hollow, just going through the motions of living. She thought about the journey, the surgeries, the pain, the court battle, the transformation. I thought I was saving him, she whispered to herself. But really, he saved me. Captain had taught her that broken things could heal, that love was worth the pain, that mercy was stronger than revenge, that every life mattered, every single one. She and Captain walked to her truck through the softly falling snow. Christmas music played on the radio as they drove home. Captain's head rested on her lap, his weight warm and solid and real. They passed the abandoned gas station where she'd found him. Elle glanced at it, silently thanking whatever force had brought them together. Home appeared ahead, lights glowing in the windows. Sarah's car was already in the driveway. She'd promised to cook Christmas dinner. Inside, foster animals waited. Cats curled on furniture, dogs in various stages of healing. Family not by blood, but by choice. Captain limped to his bed by the fireplace and curled up, groaning contentedly the way old dogs do. He looked at Elle with his one good eye. In that look was complete trust, absolute love, perfect peace. Sarah emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. How was Marcus? He took his treatment. Captain stayed with him the whole time. Sarah smiled. That dog has a calling. He does. Elle knelt beside Captain, running her hand over his scarred head. A year ago, I thought my life was over. And now I know it was just beginning. Outside, snow continued to fall on Whitefish. Inside, a fire crackled. Captain's gentle snoring filled the room. And somewhere across America, people were still watching that courtroom video, still sharing Captain's story, still learning what it meant to choose love over convenience, mercy over judgment, hope over despair. Captain's story had been viewed 47 million times, but numbers couldn't measure what really happened. A dog who should have died chose to live. A woman who'd stopped believing found faith again. A town divided found unity. And all of us watching learned what love really means. Not the easy kind. Not the convenient kind. The kind that shows up in a blizzard. The kind that fights when everyone says quit. The kind that sees a broken creature and says, "You're worth it." That's what Captain taught us. That's what Elle proved. And that's why. Even when you're old and you've seen everything, a story like this still makes you believe in miracles, because sometimes, on the coldest night, life gives you a second chance. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to take it, that chance saves you both. Captain's story reminds us of truths we sometimes forget in our busy, complicated world. Family isn't always the people we're born to or the circumstances we're given. Sometimes family is the one who shows up on Christmas Eve, the one who fights for you when you can't fight for yourself, the one who sees your scars and loves you anyway. Elle didn't set out to become Captain's mother. She'd retired, closed herself off, decided her season of caring was over. But life had other plans. Captain needed her and she needed him just as much. Their story teaches us that it's never too late to open your heart again. That broken things can heal if someone believes they're worth saving. That gratitude isn't just saying thank you, it's showing up, day after day, even when it's hard. Captain showed gratitude by becoming a healer himself. Elle showed it by choosing love over bitterness. Whitefish showed it by becoming a community that protects the vulnerable. We all have a captain in our lives, someone who needs us, or someone we need. The question is whether we'll have the courage to show up. Now I'd like to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed an injustice where the legal system failed to protect someone vulnerable? What would you have done in Elle's position? Fought the law or accepted defeat?